Hello and welcome to the SQL Interactive Marketing Podcast, a podcast that's dedicated to focus on all the things for small businesses to grow and effectively run their business the best as possible. Today with me, I've got a wonderful guest. His name's Sean. He runs the Digital Organizer, and his business focuses on a lot of the things that we don't often think about, and that's the back end. When we think about marketing and getting our business out there, getting more exposure, getting more customers, more leads, we oftentimes don't think about all the intricacies that go on behind the scenes. And that's what Sean kind of manages with his company, the Digital Organizer. And why don't you just walk us through just real quick on what kind of things that you guys focus on for your services with your customers?
Yeah, so the Digital Organizer helps people figure out where to find things, what's important, where do I find it, and how do we do this quickly? So things spread out as we grow our companies, we grow our teams, we add more people, we add more resources and tools, and people are experiencing data loss because it's just lost. As you know, everyone creates their own Dropbox account to just make it happen, just get it done.
Yeah.
And so things get spread out. And then a lot of people, they are either struggling to get what they need done, or they want to optimize, they want to automate, but they can't because it's too spread out.
Yeah.
And so we help them get all that stuff under control. Those core tools, emails, files, passwords, project management. You do that really well, you can use whatever tool you want and stay organized.
Yeah.
But we need to have a single point of view. We help people do that.
That's great. And that's critical too, because I can imagine in a larger company when you have, like, say, a social manager or someone that's in PR or anything in that capacity. I've seen some folks that have their own type of file management, file organization. And when you get folks that are not on the same page, that are managing, I've got this PDF or this image that needs to go here and go there. Like, well, how do they succinctly save together in the right spots, the right way, at the right time? And I can imagine that only compounds and gets so much worse. The larger the team, you onboard someone, you've got a team member that's doing this or doing that. Is there a good process for how a team needs to focus on preparing that when they're a small business before they start growing and adding to their team to really think through that?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I would say probably the most important thing to start with is making sure that you are using the right types of folders. I think
a folder's a folder, right? No.
A folder is not a folder. And that's one of the things that gets so many people into trouble. I'll give you an example and what the solution is. So we just finished up a project with a company based out of New Zealand. They create curriculum for teachers to be more effective teachers.
Okay.
And so they've got collaborators from all over the world. Every continent except Antarctica, they've got people collaborating on stuff and creating materials, doing lessons plans and things like this. They started with a Gmail account at gmail.com.
Joy.
and so great. They grew this business. They started it. They created a official Google workspace at some point.
Okay.
Fantastic. Started using that. But the entire time they're using MyDrive.
Oh.
And the thing with MyDrive
Whose MyDrive are they using?
Whose MyDrive are they using? So you've got this gmail.com account, and they create a folder and they share it with someone who's going to collaborate with them. And when that collaborator puts a file in their folder, or we'll just say my folder, I'm going to share it with you, and you put a file in my folder, you own it.
Yeah.
Because MyDrive is about individual ownership. And so most people don't realize this, and they're even using Google Workspace.
Yep.
Or Dropbox or whatever, and they think that they're using the right folders and they're sharing it, and the files are getting to them, which is great.
Yeah.
But if the person who created that says, I delivered that to Sean 2 years ago, I don't need this anymore, and they start cleaning out their Google Drive or Dropbox, which they do.
Yes.
Then they go bye-bye from your folder structure. So people aren't owning their own files, and we've got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars we're spending on contractors to create material for us, and they don't actually own it.
Wow.
So using the right type of folder is really important. So if we're talking about Google, you want to be in Google Workspace Business Standard. So there's Starter, that's, $6 a month, $7 a month, per account. You need to get up to that standard, which as of today, I think they just bumped the price up to 14. So we're paying 12, but if you're just signing up, it's 14 a month. It's like, do I really need that? Yes. Because when you create a shared drive and you share a folder with someone from that type of folder, whatever the contractors or the outside email address puts in there, you own. And so when you want to remove someone, that contract ends and you don't want them in your space anymore, very easy to do, and they no longer have access to your stuff.
Yeah.
So the same thing goes for OneDrive, for Google, for Dropbox and things like that. You got to get on the right tier. You got to use the right type of folders. And when you do it that way, you're set up for success as far as like ownership and everything. And then from there, it's about how do you organize it in a way that's promoting collaboration and you're not constantly having to share things.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's even just the aspect of the individual user, and that can vary on depending upon the company, their level of technical savviness. So when somebody like a Google does even just a refresh on their image, and something looks a little different, people can panic and they can get worried. Like, where did this go? It's like nothing changed. It's just a little refresh on the image there. But what's that like for you when you're trying to help? You're doing not only a technical service, but you're also trying to educate. So it's kind of a twofold for you.
Yeah.
Where it's not only you're helping the business become more organized, but you're having to have a process or set up a system to where when they bring in new people, you train all the team, and then they bring on new people. This is how you need to help them become a process. So you have a twofold job.
Yeah.
What's that like for the mindset of like getting them to shift from not only your folder structure, but change your thoughts on how you need to work with this?
Yeah. So it has to be kind of a discovery process. Okay. What we realized and why we do this twofold approach is we have to do it with you, not for you, because if it's our system, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So we've got to work with you to pull out what your system is. There are general business principles and folder, structures and stuff that would be standard across the board. But what your process is going to be unique from another marketing company's process.
Yeah.
So we all do things a little differently, and we all think about it our own way. And so what we're looking to do is figure out, what is your process? How do you do it? And how do we think about this digital workspace like a digital workshop where we would have drawers in specific places? We're designing a flow around it. And so when you're doing the process, what are you thinking about? What are you going to be accessing?
Yeah.
So, should I put the logos here or should I put them there? I access this logo multiple times from different places. What do I do with that? Okay, when you're going to create it, what's your process? How do you go and find it?
Yeah.
And what are you building? So, we're really trying to think about those stages of how does it actually work to do it?
Yeah.
And then we build the folder structure around your process, not around what the types of folders are or the categories that they go in or anything like that.
On SQL side, we create content and marketing strategy and think through how do we get more people to see you. Now, on a business side, there's another step, another layer that SQL doesn't necessarily touch, because we often ask our clients, hey, if we get you, let's say it works really well, we double the amount of customers that are coming through your door, are you able to handle that? Yeah. And that's a multifold question as well, because it's not only can you support the workload, it's also, do you have the staff, do you have the process, or do you, even if it's a physical or laborious thing, do you have the supplies that you can actually facilitate managing double the workload? Like if things work great, and if it does what we expect, can you handle that? But that's also on a data side of incoming leads that we can push your way as a customer support. We can push your way and have them funnel and managing it with their Google account so that it runs in either a CRM or some sort of database for them. But how that gets organized and how the team acts once that hits their side they need to have that process set up.
Right.
So what's that like in your experience on a client management system? I know you have a story of a client that had a very poor experience with Facebook, with their ads accounts and all that kind of stuff. Why don't you share maybe just some higher level kind of thought process on how companies should think about that before they start even thinking about running marketing and getting those leads in? I know it's a bit of a loaded question there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, there's a number of different directions that we could go in. But let's start with this. I just got back from Tony Robbins' conference. It was a Business Mastery. Incredible conference. But he did this exercise with one of his companies to basically, there were a number of different areas that needed to be improved. And so he was trying to find out which one doesn't need to be improved. And let's improve that one so that it proves to everyone else that it can be done.
Wow.
All right. So it was the coaching team and it was their sales process. So and so he's working with not the coaches themselves, but the salespeople. And they, of course, know all their numbers. So that's the first part, is really figuring out what are your numbers.
Yep.
And the exercise was, let's go in and make some real small improvements and see what kind of result we can get. So by increasing their leads by 20%, and then tweaking the next 3 steps of the sales process, between 3 and like 6%, that's it. Only increasing it that much percent ended up with 117% increase in revenue.
Oh my gosh. The thing that didn't need tweaking was tweaked and increased the revenue 100 and what did you say?
17%.
117%.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can only imagine if you created that process and then went back and retooled the other areas that obviously needed fixing, how much of an impact on the bottom line business, margin effect. Like, how much could the business, and it just blows my mind just thinking about.
There were a lot of like really fun exercises like that.
Oh
like a 10% increase in leads, 10% increase in your dollar or purchase per customer, and then 10% increase in repeat sales comes up to like 50-something% increase in revenue.
Man.
So 10% in each place turns into 50-something%.
Wow.
And then 20% is like 90 whatever, or like near 100% increase if you're just 20% of those 3 things. So it's so interesting how those small tweaks can make a difference.
Yeah.
So I bring that up because how do you know what you need to increase?
Sure,
or
that's
what
fair.
the levels are, or what the process is.
Yeah.
And so with this, it was, the big numbers was 20% increase in leads.
Okay.
Right. So, but then from there, it was the sales process. And there was a huge gap between the top performer and the average. I mean, massive gap between them.
Interesting.
And they weren't sharing that information. And so, like, there wasn't a systematic way to share what that process was. So my thought process, while he's talking all this revenue, and that was super exciting, like going through it, or like, oh, what could this do to my business? But it made me think about the process. Why wasn't everyone privy to the same process that the top performer was?
Interesting. Okay.
And then we've got another business that we're about to work with. Like, they create marketing materials and these playbooks for people to use to be able to execute on a specific strategy.
Okay.
Well, they get out of date quickly.
Yeah.
Because the technology is changing so fast, or a business goes out of business, and that's who you're referring them to, and whatever. So they can't update those materials very easily. So these are the types of things that are in the background that really hamper us from being able to make optimizations like this. So where are your processes being stored?
Yeah.
Are you documenting them at all? And then where are you putting them? So for the sales team, we'd want to have a sales folder.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's the client's folder. It depends. What's your process?
Is it a share?
Yeah. So for us, we do sales and everything, but I don't have a sales folder. It's clients. And so the process for the sales is going to go in there. or potentially you have a folder for templates.
Yeah.
I wish I could show you my process, but I actually have a template for my sales process.
Mm-hmm.
So while it's not actually stored in clients, it is in my templates, I can go in and tweak. So I realize, I need to change this question.
Mm-hmm.
This is really the heart of what we're trying to get to in this call. Let me change this question in here and change the format.
Yeah.
So now every call I make comes from the same process that I go through for it. So where are we finding those numbers? When you're tracking your revenue or what you can handle, where's the process?
Yeah.
Do you have it documented anywhere? Is it centralized in a way that the key stakeholders or the people who are involved in that process can access it?
Yeah.
And then that also comes down to project management too, of really understanding what your capacity is.
Yeah.
So
what about on like a marketing side, thinking through those incoming leads, when we go back to the sales side, thinking through the typical process, is there I don't know if I want to dive into like a scary scenario or more of like give us an example of an optimized scenario. Like maybe I'll let you pick. What would you rather explore on explaining how do you recover from such a like disorganized state, or how do you optimize or show us what we need to strive to achieve, like using a specific CRM or a platform that utilizes? So I'll let you choose the path, if you will, of either going down the chaos situation of you're in dire need of help here, or show us what an optimized system could potentially look like.
So we'll start with all the people who can't dream until the mess is sorted.
Sure,
so
fair.
We'll start with that.
Okay.
So what do we do when we've got a big mess? Well, let's think about the 80-20 rule.
Okay.
So when it comes to our files, the 20% that is supposed to be the good stuff is way smaller, like is 5% of what we actually have are things that are relevant to now. So if you want to get started quickly, let's go find the things that are relevant right now.
Okay.
And let's pull those into a new system. So think through, how do I do this? What's my process? How do I do it?
Yeah.
And what are all the things that I need to accomplish this task? Go get that stuff and put it in there.
Yep. Start with that.
Get that dialed in, and that's really what you want to focus on.
Makes sense.
If you can't leave it there and you need the rest of the stuff handled, cool. Create an archive folder in that place.
Yeah.
Go find the rest of the stuff that relates to it and grab that and stick it in your archive.
Okay.
And I would discourage you from immediately going in and renaming and sorting it and doing all that stuff, because that's fake work.
Yeah.
That it's a convenience to have it quick to search and to find. If you go in and you search that stuff a lot, yes, that's a worthy goal to go in and deal with that that archive and make it really nice. Or if you've got an executive assistant that you're paying and they're not busy, go in and rename those files. Here's a good naming convention. So that's kind of get it under control quick. That's really the heart of our process, is let's focus on what's relevant now.
Yep.
And then let's get the rest of the stuff and figure out an appropriate archiving strategy for this is stuff that I may reference again. These are things that I can't bear throwing away, but it's a different part of the business. Let's create a different archive for that.
Yeah.
And so that it's just not in our face anymore. So that's how you get control of the mess quickly.
Okay.
What was the other part?
The other part is like an optimized, like, I guess I would ask, like, if you came to a customer that was saying, okay, we're a medium-sized company, we've got quite a few team members, but we don't have the best CRM or a process. We're kind of using more manual folders, and they're wanting to go into a more of a structured system of management for their projects, their leads, their incoming. Like, do you have like a platform? Like, is there, I know Salesforce is massive, big entity, but for some medium or smaller businesses, that might be too expensive. I know there's things like HubSpot that kind of like have a lot of free options, but then there's always those walls that you run into real quick of like, well, that's a paid feature.
And that's $800 a month.
Exactly.
You're like, I just spent all this time getting HubSpot, and now it's $800. Yeah.
So maybe paint a little picture of what could a small to medium-sized business that has a small team, medium-sized team, they're wanting to optimize themselves. They could maybe say, okay, I'm going to set up my account with here, and then they give you a call to help them guide the rest of the way. But like, what's a digital organizer preferred platform or some sort of process that you suggest for people to go through?
So I have always hated CRMs, and it took me a long time to finally get on one, way longer than I should have, to be perfectly honest. I ended up going with Pipedrive.
Okay.
Because of we're service-based and some different things like that. And I talked to a number of sales consultants who've worked with a bunch of different platforms, and I actually asked them, like, hey, this is what I do. What should I go for? That's actually what I would advise someone do is go find somebody who does sales consultants, things like that. I forget. There's a specific company. If I think of it, we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
It's like, who can you just have a brief conversation with and save yourself a lot of time and heartache getting on the right platform?
For sure.
So find somebody who can speak to your business and what your particular needs are to get that going. Secondly, find somebody who can help you build that out. We actually don't do that. We're more foundational. Like most of the people who end up coming to us, they don't have their core systems in place, and like it's like you don't have a process for any of this stuff in the first place. We've got to get that going to then graduate you up into the next thing. But when I set up my CRM, I hired somebody to do it, and I actually found someone on Upwork who was a pro in Pipedrive, and I handed over what our current process. So these are all the things. So I originally, because I didn't like CRMs, I built our process all through Asana.
Okay. Yep.
And so I had experience of what worked and what didn't and everything like that. And so I took that and all of my ideas for the upgrades to someone to build that out for me.
Wow.
And it was totally affordable.
So that brings, though, an interesting, unexpected answer or result is that not all CRMs are created equal, that they might not be a good fit for everybody in the capacity of, everyone just thinks Salesforce and HubSpot and Hootsuite for different like integrations and management. It's like, no, there are so many service providers or SaaS software, if you will, for all kinds of businesses. And the answer to that is surprising, which is find someone that knows these platforms and get the right one for you. Get the right one for you.
Exactly.
That's a surprise. I wouldn't have thought that in the capacity of that there are better CRMs that are better built to support very unique services or products that are made in the capacity of, I imagine even you think of large entities, more than likely it sounds like they might even just have their own. Is that a thing that you've run into where maybe they're not using a big tool and they've built their own?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Definitely. I mean, I'm a part of some different business communities, and I hear that a lot. Like, we couldn't find the CRM for our industry, so we built our own, and now we're marketing this, and, all these things from, a political things, like really the whole platform just for political CRM.
Interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of different avenues there. But I would say don't wait, though, for the perfect system to get started.
Sure.
Now, you may not want to spend a ton of time and money building out a CRM. I don't know what I'd say. Take your time coming into them, but while you may be taking your time picking your platform, don't take your time figuring out your process.
Sure.
So designing out what that looks like first, the whole thing with the how do you, you got an hour to cut down or a day to cut down a tree. How much time do you spend? You sharpen your axe. Well, people aren't thinking about the environment that they're working in and realizing your Google Workspace, like the digital tools that you're using, these are your digital headquarters.
Yeah.
And they're laid out like crap. And so then you're struggling through that whole thing. And then you think about, wouldn't it be nice if we could just do this?
Yeah.
Well, if you had it written down, if you had a process for that, then you can change that pretty easily.
Yeah.
And once you get it going, then you can optimize. But don't wait to get started with that.
Yeah. Let's change it up even more and ask a question around the idea of teams. And I know you've mentioned a few scenarios in the past to me about just like permissions and all that kind of stuff that are settings that you can have. Yeah. You onboard somebody new, you offboard somebody that's no longer part of your team. Like those are all very specific processes that you can have for not only file management, but who gets what, how does it get managed? Maybe walk me through kind of like a scenario of some of the biggest areas of opportunity that you've seen from your work where people should more than likely start their focus on. Make sure you don't drop the ball here, because that can be a lot to clean up if you do that wrong.
Yeah. 2 areas: files and passwords.
Files and passwords. Well, files we did talk a little bit about, but we didn't talk about passwords.
Yeah.
What's all involved with passwords? Because once, if I get a new employee set up and we give them whether they're through Google or through Microsoft, like those are the big ones that people use. What more else do I need to do besides passwords as an employee?
Well, they need to set up 2-step verification on day 1. No fluffy 1, 2, 3 passwords.
Yeah.
And you need to set up 2-step verification as a non-negotiable.
Okay.
Because of the potential consequences.
Okay.
When you get hacked, you are a target forever. It doesn't stop. It makes it worse. You get a bunch of phishing emails already. You're constantly getting phishing emails. Usually, most of them are being filtered out. Yeah. So it doesn't matter how many you see. Multiply it by 10, 20, 30. That's what you're actually getting, but your email service provider is filtering them out.
Wow.
So, we get phone calls, we get emails. There's all kinds of phishing attempts where people are trying to get your information and give them your money.
Yeah.
So when someone on your team gets hacked, or when they target your customers, because they'll find you and then realize that all of your targets or all of your clients are really juicy, then they start going after their targets, impersonating you.
Oh my gosh.
I
can only imagine the nightmare possibility.
It gets crazy. Well, I'll give you a nightmare possibility. This marketing company, I worked with the owner for years, but just on the personal side. He never brought me into the business, but we worked with him personally and did a bunch of stuff. And he was on LastPass. I'm like, dude, you got to get on 1Password. Like, we got to change this up. Oh, yeah, like my team does all this, whatever. Well, one of his primary developer was a Facebook ads manager.
Okay.
So with Facebook, you have to have your own account, right? And so then you're made managers of all these things. And so his account was attached to all of their clients' Google Ads accounts.
Yep.
And somebody figured out his password for Facebook.
Okay. Multi-step possible nightmare on a personal and professional state at this point. But
yes.
I imagine we're going to go down the professional side especially.
Yeah. So what they did is they found all of the ads accounts that were being managed by this person, made themselves admins, locked out the real admins, and started buying ads with his clients' credit cards.
Oh my gosh. Hopefully, at least, were they ads for that company, or were they?
Oh no, they were ads for themselves. Oh, so these companies that hired a marketing company,
that's a nightmare.
Just paid for scam ads.
Oh my goodness.
Their money on the line to pay for scams.
Wow.
So you can imagine what happened to the business. These are business partners.
Yeah. My
client was forced to he was in a forced buyout. So he was, so He took home $500,000 from that business a year.
Oh my gosh. That gives you a glimpse into the scale of the impact there, because a business running that amount with a business partner making that much money
and profit that he's taking home, that's his draw.
Yeah. And the impact in the long term of, did that business close? Like, did they have to, like, I imagine that was pretty impactful to their...
I don't know what happened to the original business,
Okay.
but we also helped them create a new Google Workspace. Well, actually, no, they had another Google Workspace. We merged. I actually had to merge 2 Google Workspaces together and set up whole new systems, new domains, redirect everything, get the emails set up properly, because it was a rebrand for that other business. It was a side business that he had that he, was a little more specific, generalized it, so he's back in marketing.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, so we helped them, get all the administrative stuff, getting the platform set up properly, got them set up with 1Password, worked with every single employee to import all of their passwords from Chrome into 1Password, helped them learn how, and went through it together to change all of the passwords to something random, and then set up 2-step verification for all of those accounts going forward, and made sure that they're trained, that they know how to use the system. So
that pinged an interesting thought in my mind, that a lot of people, probably more on just the consumer side, that people don't think about just letting Google remember your passwords, about the deeper personal impact that could have by not having that secure, or very reliably secure. Where I use 1Password myself, so I was able to not have a massive impact happen to me to come to that. But with having the web browser remember so many passwords, like if they open your phone, get past your phone's Face ID or ID, and they can open straight into your browser, like that's a very deep, like your credit cards, your access to your accounts, like that's very personal, very quick.
Yeah, it's I mean, if you really think about it, it's very scary. It's really overwhelming. And I think because it's so big, people shy away from it and don't pay attention. And it's just like, they just kind of push it off. I don't know. That's one theory that may or may not be correct, but it's just so rare that anyone actually does anything about it. Like, I don't have anything worth stealing. I don't make that much money.
Yeah.
But like, the harassment that you will experience forever after being a target, like someone who actually was a mark, like once a mark, always a mark, that's just the reality. We had another client. She responded to a phishing email. It was like something like, Norton, your Norton subscription has renewed. If you didn't make this purchase, call us here, which went to this, call center in India. And, and it's just this whole thing. And she almost lost. Actually, she initiated a $70,000 wire.
Why?
It's social manipulation.
Oh my gosh.
It is so rarely a real hack. Hacking is social manipulation and people creating scenarios, and they preyed on her goodwill. The scheme is they made it seem like they accidentally refunded her $70,000 instead of $700.
Oh my gosh.
And so she wired $69,300.
Minus the $700.
Yeah.
Oh my.
To that, and then realized it and was able to stop it in time. But the person freaks out on the phone, their family, their whole life is at risk, this whole thing, because what you're looking at looks real, but they just transferred money from one account to the other. And so she's constantly harassed.
Yeah.
Another company that hired us after a hack, they're constantly getting hit, and they're hitting all of their customers all the time. So we're having to field messages. Yes, this isn't from us. Please look at the email address. You can see it's not from x.com.
Yeah.
And, it's just Yeah, it's surprising how big of an issue.
Yeah.
And the thing is, using one password makes it easier than having 4 different variations of the same password that you have to guess, you're not sure,
Yeah.
whatever. So you're insecure and it's taking you time and you may end up forgetting it, or you had this one off because there are no standards for passwords. Everyone can do their own thing. So you can create a vault for social, share it with the few people who need access just to social, incorporate the 2-step verification codes right in that login, so you don't have who's got the text, emails or phone, calls going back and forth. Oh, they're in a meeting or they're on vacation. You can't get to it.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of wrap up real quick on just what your thoughts are as your business being focused on digital organization. Is there something that if one of our viewers or listeners are thinking this is critical for them, you're hitting home for them, how could they reach out to you?
Yeah. Go to thedigitalorganizer.com/sequel.
Okay.
So from there, there will be a little page with something that you can download.
Great.
And we'd love for you to take a little quiz of where you can see how organized are you.
Perfect.
And that's not about your files and folders, but how effective is your organization system is. That's going to give you a starting point of what you need to focus on next.
Well, don't worry if you're feeling a little overwhelmed in that capacity, because Sean and his business, they help folks like that all the time in that capacity, and they're able to help bring things home for you to where you can be secure, be stable, be more organized, and run so much more efficiently. And if you want to reach out, go ahead and reach out to him today. Otherwise, you'll see us next time on next episode, Sequel Marketing Podcast. Take it easy.